All right, welcome to The Explainer. I am so incredibly pumped you're here because today we are tackling something wild. Now, when I say the word Ozarks, I'm willing to bet a very specific image just popped into your head. You've probably seen that wildly popular Netflix show, maybe you've heard the dark legends, and you're picturing this gritty, backwoods Hollywood stereotype. But what if I told you that the real Ozarks are actually stranger, more fascinating, and honestly way more complex than anything a TV writer could ever dream up? Today, we are taking a deep dive into the real Ozarks. Beyond the Hollywood myths, we're going to unpack some bizarre, 100% true facts about this region that will completely flip your perspective. So I really have to ask, think you know the Ozarks? Because if you think it's just a place to go boating for the weekend or, hide out in some dramatic fiction, you are in for a serious shock. In this explainer, I'm going to reveal massive underground cities, towering mountains that aren't actually mountains at all, and some truly absurd local laws, like a very strict ban on bear wrestling. Yep, you heard that right, bear wrestling. By the time we're done here, you are going to look at this unique pocket of the country in a totally different way. Okay, let's jump right into Section 1, a land of geologic lies. The mountains that aren't. Here is the craziest thing. The Ozark Mountains, they're not actually mountains. Scientifically speaking, the Ozarks are an eroded plateau. So what does that actually mean? While true mountain ranges like the Rockies were violently shoved upward by colliding tectonic plates, the Ozarks were formed completely differently. They were carved by hundreds of millions of years of water, just patiently wearing down solid rock. Instead of being pushed up, they were carved out. When you're standing in the Ozarks, you're basically standing on top of a giant, ancient piece of Swiss cheese. And to really grasp the sheer scale of that Swiss cheese effect, you just have to look at the numbers. Because of all that relentless water erosion through the limestone, Missouri is officially known as the Cave State. It boasts over 7,000 documented caves in the Ozark region alone. And we're not just talking about tiny little holes in the ground here. Some of these subterranean spaces are so incredibly massive that they literally generate their own internal weather systems. It's a whole hidden world right beneath people's feet. Take Marvel Cave, for instance. Get this, it was originally discovered by explorers who were searching for bat poop. I'm totally serious. Back in the 1800s, explorers went wandering down into the pitch black, looking for guano to harvest and use as fertilizer. But instead of just finding a modest little guano deposit, they accidentally stumbled into one of the largest cave chambers in all of North America. Talk about a happy accident, right? It's just this hilarious, amazing origin story for what is today a huge tourist destination. But the water in the Ozarks hides way more than just caves. It actually hides human history. Case in point, the submerged ghost towns of the Lake of the Ozarks. When the Bagnall Dam was built back in the 1930s, the water rose incredibly fast. It rose so fast, actually, that it swallowed entire communities whole. We were talking about family homesteads, historic cemeteries, and old bridges, all of it perfectly preserved under the water. Today, scuba divers can literally swim down and explore the creepy remains of this ghost world, just sitting quietly at the bottom of the lake. Which brings us to Section 2. Isolated culture, global power. From the hollers to the boardroom. Because the Ozarks were so deeply isolated by their geography for so long, the culture here preserved things that completely vanished everywhere else in the country. Deep down in the valleys, or the hollers as the locals call them, older generations still speak a dialect that sounds way more like 17th century Elizabethan English than modern American English. It is literally a linguistic time capsule, perfectly protected by those steep hills and eroded valleys we were just talking about. But hey, do not let that old world backwoods charm fool you. The Ozarks are a secret global economic powerhouse. Hidden deep in the hills, the seemingly sleepy town of Bentonville, Arkansas actually birthed absolute corporate titans. Walmart, the world's largest company, started right here in a tiny little five-and-dime shop. And it's definitely not alone. The region is also the headquarters for Tyson Foods and J.B. Hunt. This rugged, isolated landscape is arguably one of the most influential economic hubs on the entire planet, and it's just quietly tucked away in the woods. And the surprises absolutely do not stop at corporate logistics. If you're a fan of live theater, actually, scratch that. Even if you aren't, this is mind-blowing. Forget Broadway. The tiny town of Branson, Missouri, nestled right there in the Ozarks, has more theater seats than the entire New York City theater district. No way, right? It proudly calls itself the live music capital of the world. And the most absurd part of the whole thing? The vast majority of these theaters are crammed onto a single neon-lit 7-mile strip of road. It is just an incredible, dense concentration of entertainment. All right, shifting gears to Section 3. strange laws and stranger legends. The weird, the wild, the bend. Imagine a creature that is said to be part bear, part cat, with glowing eyes and a scream that sounds like a human in distress. Yikes, right? Well, that terrifying description belongs to the legendary Ozark howler. Locals have sworn for generations that this beast stalks the deep woods. It's essentially the Bigfoot of the Midwest. Now, if we want to be scientific about it, researchers rationally suspect it's probably just a very loud cougar or lynx echoing through those hollows. But the legend is so deeply baked into the culture that the howler remains a massive part of local identity. And this wild local history, it literally bleeds into the legal code. In Missouri, it is strictly 100% illegal to wrestle bears. And this wasn't passed as some random funny joke. It was a completely serious law enacted to stop traveling carnivals from exploiting animals. So if you were planning a nice little weekend trip to the Ozarks for a 3-round bout with a grizzly, yeah, I'm sorry to ruin your weekend plans, but that is highly illegal. Speaking of things that totally defy logic, let's talk about Eureka Springs. It's known as the city that was never meant for flat ground. The entire layout of this town practically defies gravity. It is built completely on incredibly steep hillsides. In fact, it is famous because there are absolutely no two streets in the entire town that cross at a standard 90-degree angle. It is a logistical nightmare for city planners, and the locals have this running joke that if your car loses its brakes up there, you are not stopping until you hit a completely different county. All right, let's pick up the pace. Section 4, Rapid Fire Ozark Facts, the final sprint. Here we go. First up, Northwest Arkansas actually hosts the largest Marshallese population outside of the Marshall Islands themselves. It is this massive, highly unexpected demographic fact that brings an incredibly vibrant Pacific Island culture straight into the heart of the deeply landlocked American Midwest. Next fact. The Buffalo River in the Ozarks holds a very special environmental title. It was the very first river in the entire United States to get federal protection specifically as a national river. That designation was hard-fought and won just to protect its pristine waters from being dammed and flooded, ensuring it stays wild forever. Okay, and how about this bizarre piece of pop culture history? There's an Ozark town famous for a totally disastrous promotional stunt where live turkeys literally fell from the sky. If that sounds oddly familiar to you, it's because this chaotic, real-world event actually inspired one of the most famous episodes of the classic TV sitcom WKRP in Cincinnati. Finally, let's ground all of this wild trivia in some deep human history. From the end of the last ice age, about 12,000 years ago, right up to the present day, we have found artifacts deep in these hills proving that humans have been living, adapting, and surviving in the Ozarks ever since the ice retreated. So this isn't just a place of recent folklore. It is an ancient, enduring human home. Wow. Okay, we have covered a ton of ground today, but it leaves us with a really fascinating question. As the world gets more and more connected, can a place defined by its ancient, rugged isolation keep its hidden magic? Or will the real Ozarks eventually fade into just another Hollywood myth? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so let me know in the comments below. Did the underwater ghost towns surprise you the most? The ban on bear wrestling? The Ozarks are clearly so much more than just a gritty TV backdrop. If you enjoyed this explainer, please like and subscribe so I can bring you even more hidden history. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and I'll see you in the next one.